Persepolis by Marjane Satrapi. Chapter 4 Persepolis. For the summer, in this chapter, when Margie's grandmother visits the home, Margie questions her about what happened when her grandfather was imprisoned. Her grandmother talks about how destitute she was in the past. She would sometimes pretend to make meals that she didn't have in order to maintain her good looks in front of the neighbors who could see through the window. She also stated that the Shah, according to her, was even 10 times worse than the Shah's father. Unlike the other Iranian kings of history, he was a tremendous waste of money, a loud talker, and a broken promise maker. The Shah paid a visit to the tomb of Cyrus the Great, who formerly ruled over the ancient world during his coronation. Next, Margie's grandma tells how all the country's money got into ridiculous celebrations of the 2,500-year dynasty and other frivolities, but the citizens who weren't able to give any attention benefited from none of this. The Shah, according to her, only did this to impress the heads of state. Then, Margie's grandmother says she is relieved that there is finally a revolution. Regardless of Margie's first question about her grandfather at the beginning of the chat, she does not bring up the subject directly. In spite of it being highly forbidden, Margie's father pictures the ongoing demonstrations throughout the revolution every day. The family eagerly awaits his homecoming because of the potential chaos his actions can cause. To everyone's horror, he eventually arrives home late one day and tells them that he was at the hospital when he saw a group of people carrying the body of a young man killed by the army. According to Margie's father, the crowd honored the young man like a martyr. The crowd of people gathered around the dead body, which was an elderly man this time, and referred to him as a hero, just as they had referred to the young man. He was not a martyr at all. It turns out that he had cancer. When Margie's father asked the old man's wife about his passing, the old woman does, however, participate in the rally celebrating the deceased old man and taunting the Shah at the request of the people. They yell, "The king is a killer," in unison. Everyone in the family chuckles with the exception of Margie, who finds it hard to believe that a narrative about a cadaver, cancer, death, and murder can make people laugh. Eventually, she chuckles but doesn't understand, so she makes the decision to read as much as she can in order to gain an understanding of the situation that had occurred. Thematic concerns that played out in the story. One thematic concern that is prevalent in this chapter would be oppression and resistance. Chapter 4's thematic concern of power and resistance to the oppression helps to highlight the difficult and restricting circumstances Margie and other Iranians had to live through at that time, with the people going out of their way to protest against the Shah and refusing to adhere to his rule shows how the people denied him actually being the ruler. It draws attention to the ways in which people and families rebelled, even in tiny ways, to preserve their feeling of individuality and independence. This topic establishes one of the foundations for Margie's future ongoing struggles of resistance against the oppressive government, which develops over the course of the graphic novel. Another main thematic concern is family and relationships. Margie turns to her close relatives in an attempt to make sense of the complicated events surrounding the rising of the Shah and the ensuing revolution, including how her family was involved and how it all transpired. Margie's grandmother avoids discussing her grandfather's suffering by engaging in other challenging but not as disturbing topics in response to her asking about him. She explains how at the time when Iran's people were starving and living in poverty, the Shah squandered vast sums of money on misinformation. Although this also broader than usual shows the manner in which rulers frequently want to dominate rather than assist those they rule. She emphasizes the clear contrast between the Shah and the ordinary citizens. In Chapter 4, the subject of relationships and family plays a crucial role in illustrating the complicated subject of family dynamics in the midst of social unrest and political unrest. It draws attention to the love, support, and conflict that families may experience in the face of outside forces and various views. The global issue that I found would be the ill treatment of citizens done by rulers of a country. Many people have mistreated their own people by abusing their position of authority throughout history. It happens when those in positions of power, whether rulers, emperors, or government officials, take actions that violate their citizens' fundamental liberties and rights. This can take many different forms, such as forced relocation, discrimination, censorship, police violence, and political repression. In this case, it is with the Shah of Iran. In previous chapters, it is revealed that Margie's grandfather on her mother's side was actually related to the Shah. Margie's grandfather, however, went to an international school and began to uphold new political ideologies and did not support what his father was doing. So he was therefore thrown in jail because of it. We can see how this global issue plays out when Margie's grandmother explains the hardships that she had to go through because of the Shah due to her husband's imprisonment, and how she had to fend for herself and her children alone in order for them to survive. Another instance where we see this global issue happening would be when the people are protesting outside the hospital. We can view pictures of this large-scale anti-Shah rally and demonstration on these pages. People were seeking an end to the dictatorial authority of Mohammad Reza Pahlavi, the Shah of Iran, and their protests played an important role in the Iranian Revolution. The panels also show how unrest and political tensions are rising across the nation. Confrontations between protesters and government troops resulted from these tensions. The Iranian Revolution was defined by this volatility and unrest. Authorial choices that I found. Verbal irony. This authorial choice plays out when Margie's grandmother is explaining how the Shah has never kept any promises and how the Shah had said that the country will regain their splendor. This implies that the Shah had never intended to do anything to help his people and led the country downhill due to the way he ruled it. Another authorial choice that I found would be panel layout. For this authorial choice, it is significantly seen when Margie's father talks about what he witnessed at the hospital. With the dead body of the young man, it paints a vivid picture of the things that happened during that period in the country and how, as stated from before, the Shah mistreated his people. Thank you for listening to this presentation of Chapter 4, Persepolis.